Good evening. Hello. I hope everyone is doing very well tonight. My name is Michael Green. I am the Director of Innovation and Creativity in the Department of Learning and Public Engagement at the Art Institute of Chicago. Tonight, it's our great pleasure to welcome you to our virtual artist talk with Laurie Anderson in conversation with writer and scholar Sianne Ngai. This program is presented as part of Artists on Artists, a series highlighting the creative process and creative communities. In this series, leading artists, authors, musicians, and performers inspire new ways of understanding the museum's collection while making connections to their own practice. In tonight's conversation, Laurie Anderson reflects on her own groundbreaking practice in visual art, music, theater, and film, while exploring the Art Institute's much-loved Thorne Miniature Rooms, a collection of 68 interiors designed and constructed in Chicago in the 1930s, each room a shoebox-sized stage set. First, though, before we begin, a little housekeeping. The program will last approximately 1 hour. This program will be shared in presentation mode, so we have turned off video and microphones for attendees. For optimal viewing, please select full screen mode under View Options in the top right corner of your screen. Throughout the program, we encourage you to share your questions and your thoughts via the chat function, and please select panel and attendee so that they're visible to everyone. For tonight's program, we are encouraging as well very creative, perhaps even out of the ordinary questions for our two speakers. I'll be selecting some of these throughout the program, and they'll be addressed by Laurie and Sianne during a brief Q&A at the end. Closed captions are available and can be turned on via the controls at the bottom of the screen as well. Now to introduce our speakers for the evening. Laurie Anderson is one of our most renowned and daring creative pioneers. Best known for her multimedia presentations, innovative use of technology, and first-person style, she's a writer, director, visual artist, and vocalist who has created groundbreaking works that span the worlds of art, theater, and experimental music. Sianne Ngai is professor of English at the University of Chicago. She's the author of Ugly Feelings from 2005, Our Aesthetic Categories, Zany, Cute, Interesting, published in 2012, and the recent publication, Theory of the Gimmick, Aesthetic Judgment and Capitalist Form. We will welcome our speakers shortly, but first, we'll begin the program this evening with two short videos by Laurie Anderson, created in response to the Thorne Miniature Rooms. This brief presentation will be followed by the conversation between Laurie and Sianne. Now, please enjoy, and I'd like to welcome you to Laurie Anderson on the Thorne Miniature Rooms.
You know, one of the things I loved about the Thorne Rooms when I was a kid was how every little detail was there. So, for example, like in this room, like the fireplace is just all the smoky bricks in the back, and the tongs, and all of the pots and pans hanging by the fireplace, and you know, all the stuff on the shelves just looks so perfect.
Hi, Laurie.
Hi, Sianne.
How are you?
I'm very good. I'm just struck at looking at those rooms again, how completely strange they are.
Yeah.
I-
Do you want to say more about that?
Well, yeah, there's another one coming up. I First of all, they really are shoebox size, aren't they? So that means that this furniture is like this big, no? I mean, uh, I don't know too much about the fabrication of these things, but it's just pretty insane. It really is. Imagine making those number of little urns and tiny little statues. That's really completely fascinating. I mean, I just remember being um, pulled into another world as a kid looking at that stuff. And you spent some time looking at it too as a kid too, right?
Yeah, and as an adult as well.
Yeah.
Do you want to say more actually about your relationship to the rooms from childhood? Because you grew up around Chicago and you went to the Chicago Art Institute.
I went there every week because I was a kid from Glen Ellen, and I came in to in the mornings. I spent in the rehearsing with the Chicago Youth Symphony, and then in the afternoons I'd walk across the street and go to the School of the Art Institute, and passing through these rooms. So every week I looked at them and went up on tiptoe looking at these, uh, especially like this one. I think you pointed out too. Uh, the amazing light in these rooms, and how it really feels very, very realistic, the way it's just kind of pouring in through the windows and lighting up various doorways and passageways and things. It's really, I don't know what I I don't know what was on my mind when I was looking at these. I think it was I loved, of course, that there was nobody in them. That was the biggest, was a big plus. They were just like dreams with nobody there.
Oh, that's interesting. Um, it's interesting in part because there are so many rooms in your work. I mean, you've made work yourself that is about rooms. And we can actually come back to that. But yeah, there is something really riveting about the ways in which these look almost like miniature stages, which clearly was on your mind in the first video that you made, which was great too, because the music was so dramatic.
Yeah, a little too dramatic for the house.
Yeah, well, then I like the juxtaposition then between that dramatic entrance and then the colonial kitchen room, which is
Yes.
the opposite.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, yeah, there's something about the rooms, they're so perfect, as you said, right? Everything is so exquisite and made to scale. And
Which is creepy and claustrophobic.
yeah, yeah.
There's no clothes thrown over the thing. It's all there's no shabby stuff. There's no old garages with stuff stuck in them. There's nobody's sad bedroom. These are all quite formal, and it's like like a real estate book or something. You're thinking, oh, I could live in that beautiful home. So it's very aspirational. It's
Yeah.
rather than, and so there are places that you wouldn't think you could live, or whether much would happen. You'd imagine the people who lived there being very, very formal and kind of repressed, like good evening. It's like it's not. They were fantasy places for me. They were not. Even the colonial things were like just a little too perfect. So, and no kitchens, or where people really spend time really in their homes, but more like the dining rooms and the more formal rooms. So, I mean, I guess that was the point of it, not to show life, but to show furniture.
It's interesting how the rooms, as sort of perfect as they are, have this sense of kind of like excitement or expectation about them. On the one hand, they're so almost precious. They're about controlling in some ways even time because they're meant to represent quote unquote period styles, right? So to capture the look of a historical moment for people of a certain class. But at the same time, the ways in which there's always the hint of a space behind the space.
Yeah.
Is that what you're getting at a little bit too about the lighting and the?
Yeah, I think in this particular room, you can imagine someone sauntering in with a cigarette lighter and just but I can't imagine anything but a very sort of like suave thing happening in here. I mean, these really are like architectural digest situations where I mean, I don't think of, I guess I like the light, but they don't seem dramatic to me particularly, just because they're too fussy,
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess you could, maybe some characters from The Great Gatsby could wander in through some of these rooms and have a temper tantrum or something, but generally they don't seem like places of drama. I do love making rooms just because they're more like ways to create um, almost ideas or for me rooms have a lot of resonance without going into the fact that drama might happen there. I mean, I remember that one of my favorite meditations, for example, is to just when I'm feeling scattered, I actually just do this exercise of I'm sitting in my childhood room when I was like maybe 6 at a desk that I had, and I'm just simply looking around the room. And it's amazing what you could see if you just relax a little bit and imagine that you're in this room, and all the things that you thought I can't possibly be remembering, that there was a light fixture there, and it was made of cherry wood, and that book. Then you look up in the bookshelves and you can see the books. And then you look around and you look down at your hands and they're really little. And then your feet are like size 4 shoes. And you're like, whoa, my heart has been beating since then. It's crazy. It's kind of continuity sort of meditation, like when you're feeling scattered and like, who am I? So you realize that you are in many ways that same person. And then the other thing that I like to do with this meditation is once I get like situated as a kid, and I see the books, and I can look in the closet, and then sometimes I get up and walk out the door and go to school. And this meditation can go on and on, what it's like to walk down the hallway, what it's like to take a drink from the drinking fountain. And the reason I do this is, like I said, to remind myself that of continuity. You think, oh, I'm so different from I'm such a different person than I used to be, but it's a meditation showing you that you're not, and it's just really a memory sort of exercise as well. It's extremely reactive. Do you ever do stuff like that? Just put yourself in a room and remember things?
I do, but I don't do it in as consciously as you do. I've actually tried some of these techniques before. I think I have to work harder on them actually. Because
it's very relaxing. It's really, really somehow very comforting to realize that it's all in here. That
I know. Yeah, I have a friend who's always telling me to sort of remember just to try to be in one's moment more, because there's so much we don't really register about just being, alive. No, I can see how that would be. like you said.
That's also being in a moment, you know, just because it's a moment that's like very long time ago.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not necessarily about reminiscing. It's trying to be in that moment, looking around in that place without nostalgia and without, you know, these other things, but just noticing.
Mm.
And it's, I know it's supposedly the opposite of Be Here Now, Ram Dass, and everybody, every other Zen teacher in the world who says, stop going into the past and stop going into the future. Just recognize that this is all we have. So, I mean, and that's I think that I had that feeling in the Thorne Rooms too, because it's so, everything is so suspended. You know, the light never changes in this Thorne Room right here. You know, it's always, I don't know, 10 in the morning or whatever time it happens to be.
Yeah.
Every clock is stopped in these little places. And so that's very relaxing. I mean, I don't feel this anticipation like someone's going to come through the door. I'm home. I just feel like they're never going to come home. So it's just suspended, a suspended time. I think you were comparing it a little bit to like a kind of calendar in a way, you know, or what was some of the
Oh
images
yeah.
you were saying?
Yeah, it's kind of related to what you're saying about continuity, because I was just thinking about how the rooms are in a way like boxes of time, because they're supposed to represent these period styles. Um, and then I was thinking about how, and I think I thought about this after thinking about your work, calendars and
Right.
diaries as also boxes of time. And those are forms actually that I know you've made or played with in a lot of your work.
Boxes.
Yeah, boxes of
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
and boxes. Do you want to say more about time or boxes?
I did, as a sculptor, I did a lot of boxes with sound. I mean, they were up on stilts. Why was I doing that? Let me think. I was um, a student of Sol LeWitt and Carl Andre. And so I was very drawn to sort of very minimal things. I also spent a year making things that looked pretty much exactly like Eva Hess. There was no variation whatsoever. I would just try to copy them exactly. And I don't know why, I just loved her work. Also, I just loved that there were, I think I was very influenced by the fact that she was a woman working with kind of tough materials. And I loved that because there weren't that many women doing the sculpture at that point. So I've kind of fixated on Ava and did a lot of prints using her name. And I said, I don't know, got a little fixated on her. But these boxes, then I started making boxes. They were almost like just record players in a way, but they were boxes with voices in them. And I suppose they could be seen as robots, but they weren't really. They were I would say more like trying to capture something and then make it very physical. So, um, which was something that was very much around then. I remember seeing some of Sol LeWitt's drawings, the numbered drawings, and I said, wow, this really looked like music scores. And so Sol said, well, make some. So I wrote a quartet. It's called Quartet for Sol LeWitt, and using those number series. And it was very interesting to me how much that piece sounded like his work. It was kind of uncanny. So we were floating among many sorts of ways of making things, music and structures, and seeing how they could morph into each other. So that was this is a very elaborate room. That bed is Wow, that's very foreshortened, I guess. It looks like it's 2 feet long. I don't know. Does that look comfortable to you?
Well, it looks silky.
Silky, yes, it looks pretty silky. Yeah,
You know,
that's
someone in the chat pointed out that our Zoom boxes are boxes, that our heads right now are in the Zoom box.
yeah, we are definitely in
We're
the
trapped.
room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that's so interesting that you mentioned Solowit, because this is a strange way, I think, to look at the Thorne Rooms. But it goes back to the continuity theme that you brought up, and the way in which things are different but also the same, which is the puzzle of continuity, right? How can something be the same but also be different? And the Thorne Rooms are, each room is clearly different, right? It's about an exhibition of difference, right? But of course, each is also very much the same. They're all very regular, I think I remember correctly, in shape. The scale is always the same scale, 1 inch to 1 foot, I believe. And this is the odd thing about it. I sometimes feel like these rooms remind me in some ways of certain kinds of conceptual art, just because they were also so interested, and specifically also Solowit, in playing with repetition and difference and seriality
And light.
Yeah.
Light also. I mean, people forget that he was really so much about light as well, and in his because he did not so many pieces afterwards, but those open grids. He was just a very engaged and open person, and I felt he for me was a wonderful teacher. And there was one thing that I wrote about in a book at one point, which was he helped me a lot as a student, and I was accepted to in a big group show in Rome. So I packed up my work and I went to Rome. I was incredibly excited to be in the show, and it was a lot of things that were leaning against the wall. It was very sort of all about leaning things, and I got there, and the big sort of warehouse on the outskirts of Rome was just that's not one light on. It looked like it hadn't been opened in years. I thought, this is the wrong place, and then I checked it, and it was the right. And then I circled around it a few times. It was a huge place. Nothing, and I thought, I'm in Rome. I'm lost, and so then I went into the city and found their offices, and I said, I'm here for the show, and they said, oh well, you didn't get the message that the show, little delay in the show. And I said, okay, that's okay, delay. And they said, it's going to be 2 weeks. And I was like, 2 weeks from now? I was like, yeah. And so actually Saul had not gotten the message either. So he showed up early too. And we said, what are we going to do? And we thought, why don't we just look at Rome? We'll just walk around Rome with no map, no plan. And it was one of the best 2 weeks of my life, because we just, Rome is a city where there are not so many vistas. It's not like Paris. Things just crop up, and you're somehow, there is, the Pantheon, like right there, like 1 inch away from you. You're like, what? So it was really exciting. And then we just had these long Italian lunches and hung out. But the day that I learned the most from him was it was drizzly November day, and we walked into a little piazza, and in the middle of the piazza there's a painter with a smock and a beret and some a palette and some easels, and he's going like this. He's actually and painting, and I was about to make some kind of I don't know, snide New York snippy remark about painting with doing this kind of thing, and salsa, it really takes dedication to paint on a day like today. And I thought, this is such a generous thing to say about another artist, that to acknowledge the effort that it takes to make something, whether you like it or not, whether it's your kind of thing or not. It just was, it just stopped me in my tracks. This is a really wonderful person. And he was, of course, a really talented teacher as well, and famously gave artists really great advice about things like make your worst work. If you're stuck, make something that's really awful. And just really somebody who loved making things and liked encouraging other people to do it too. So
did you ever do that? Did you ever
make my worst work all the time? It's one of my best most effective kind of go-to things, because it teaches you, first of all, it teaches you the rules of what you think are good, and second, it frees you to make something daring, because you don't care, you're making your worst work. So you are going to break every rule, so you learn what your rules are, and second, that work will probably have some fierce energy, worst work, okay, boom. And so it can free you, and so I highly recommend try making the worst version of this that you can imagine. Just whatever, if that's stupid for you, if the worst is stupid, if worst is ugly, if worst is, and I so much appreciate your book on those concepts of ugly things, ugly feelings, and I'm having the greatest time reading your work, because just since meeting you, I thought, oh, what is she writing about? And it's amazing. So, but that concept in particular, drawing in things that are not traditionally subject matter or worthy subject matter, so things like instead, anxiety, envy, those things that kind of eat away at you. They're not the grand emotions. I guess, the in my other training as a meditator, the training is, that all emotions are, just get rid of them. They're not helping you. They're all just dreams. So, you don't need to say that one is better than another. You don't, and if you do try for that, you're going to be very frustrated probably. So I appreciate your take on that, which is really, really fascinating. And could you say just a little bit more about that? Because I'm sure I'm just representing that in the worst way possible.
No, that's pretty much, no, you that's exactly it. Just being interested actually in, I am actually interested in negative emotions and the ones that actually are in some ways more frustrating to feel, because they don't actually push you into acting in the way that sometimes it can feel really great to be angry. And fear is actually, I think, there's fear in some of your art too. Certainly. Your art is about fear.
Some of it.
Well, it's funny, Laurie, because this is a way back earlier in the conversation, but when you said, well, I actually don't think of these Thorne Rooms as dramatic at all, I was sort of chuckling to myself, because I was like, of course you don't, because you've made these huge dramatic spaces. So of course, so there's drama and there's drama. And I was just chuckling because it's funny, because in a way the Thorne Rooms seem very un-Laurie Anderson, right? But in a way they that what I said is actually not entirely true, because they are about scale. And it seems like you have thought a lot about scale in your work and experimented with making work at different scales.
Yeah, definitely. But to go back to the thing about fear also, I mean, the thing that I probably fear about the Thorne Rooms the most, and I do fear those, is um this feeling of strangulation that I get when I see them. That I think that if I lived in one of those rooms, I would just um I have to be so polite all the time, have to say the right thing. I wouldn't be able to, for example, make my worst work in any of those rooms at all. I wouldn't. You just have to. Good evening. How are you? You know. Yeah. Oh, there's one. You know, with some armor. That is a really lovely one. You know, I have a friend who is named Jacqueline Burkhardt, and she's a really wonderful curator. I used to run Parquet magazine, and she's the only person I know who has the armor of her ancestors in her house. Can you imagine that? Yeah. And the Swiss were tiny. They were like they're quite tall now, but they used to be quite tiny. So this is a really crazy house. I guess hall. Uh, and then is that some kind of hound exhausted in front of the fireplace? Um, well, this is a dreamscape, I guess, for of another kind of order. Knights and ladies, you know, it's definitely not. I guess it's the architectural digest of its moment, but I do feel that the people in these rooms are rule bound somehow. I mean, am I projecting that? I don't know. Maybe I am, but
Well, I'm not even sure they would be real people. They would be abstractions in some ways.
Yeah.
There's something strangely abstract about the whole collection of rooms in some way, even though they're all about detail and the particular. They're all kind of idealistic in some ways, a kind of abstract projection of a certain kind of space. And
extremely idealized, yeah.
Yeah.
In the way that, you know, you like any home magazine idealizes a living space, and you realize I could never live there. I mean, you couldn't toss your jacket on it. Perfect benches or you know. So for me, I guess I see these rooms as sort of dream spaces, you know, with light in them. They're not Alice in Wonderland for me because they don't have enough fantasy. They're sort of like very too precise, I think, somehow. Maybe that's being too hard on them. It probably is because
well, I actually think it's part of their attraction. You know, they're attractive partly because they're a little repulsive. I mean,
that's their charm.
And it is interesting because they are inviting, and I think that the lighting is about making you want to peer in and imagine what's
behind. Absolutely. That's great fun. That's
what?
And is that the one with the mirror?
Yeah, this is okay. Yeah, but this actually gets to what I was gonna ask you about, which is if you agree with me that they make you want to peer in, and they are boxes, so we want to peer in. And part of the excitement of being down that basement is seeing all the other people peer in. They're very like collective in that way because you're surrounded by other people. You're very close to other people when you look inside these boxes. It's a very social.
We see a reflection of somebody's face in there.
Okay, so this is Laurie. So this is funny. You know how the perfection of the rooms, you said it was sort of stifling, and I think that makes us want to kind of enter them and play them. We want to, and you know, there are no people, and so I think because this is the thing about them that's I think a little bit aggressive, is that even though they are boxes meant to be peered into, they're also about because of the size, I always feel like I'm in the wrong body when I'm looking in them. Like, I feel like I'm like the wrong person, the wrong body.
Really, you don't enjoy
A
being a
little
giant?
bit. But it kind of makes me want to get in there somehow and be silly. So this is a picture of my sister and I hope she's okay with me showing this, where we, with a very old camera on our cell phones, put ourselves in the mirror of the Virginia drawing room. We're also from Virginia, so I think there was some kind of like,
Okay. Yeah, that's your place there.
or like it wasn't. So, but it when you put yourself in the colonial kitchen, I thought like there's a response of like, yeah, you know, you're blocking my access to this space.
Right,
You won't let me in, so I'm gonna put myself in somehow.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I enjoy being a giant and like looking into the tiny fishbowl of these rooms. I mean, it does that does make a big impression on me. Oh, here comes Willie.
oh,
Willie. Willie was the dog that was the actor in the in the room. Good job, Willie. Okay, so
yeah, he really did do a good job.
yeah,
It's very natural. It's very natural.
yeah, you look just like a dog. Yeah.
No, I do remember. So one of the first pieces of yours I saw in a gallery, Laurie, I think it was in the 90s. It was the piece about being at the shrink,
Oh yeah.
where you made yourself very small. You
Right.
made yourself very small. And then I've also seen pictures of a piece that you did. You know, a very serious piece about prisoners at Guantanamo, where you also made yourself small, but relative to the image of a former prisoner there,
Right.
who you made very big.
The At the Shrinks was the first, I guess I thought of them as film sculptures that I did. And that was from 1977 when I made this. And I made it because it was about the only time I went to see a shrink and that experience. Because I thought, okay, what was interesting about that for me was she had the office set up so that she was in see, how did that go? I was in a corner and on no, she was in a corner, and on one side was a mirror and one was a window. And I she could tell by, oh no, I was in the corner, a window and a mirror on one each side. And I looked at the mirror a lot, and I noticed that in the course of a week, the mirror would be perfectly clean and clear, and on Monday, and then by Friday it would be just covered with lip marks. And so once in passing, I said to her, "It's a process like your mirror, you know, like it's clean and then it's just covered with lip marks." And at first I thought it was weird, and then I thought it was kind of interesting, and then I began to depend on that process, you know. Part of the thing that I needed to see. And she said, "What are you talking about? What lip marks?" And I said, and I realized that because of the way the sun was coming in and hitting the mirror at an angle that from her point of view she couldn't see it. So I said, "Well, why don't you get up and come over and sit in my chair, and you can see it from here." And now I had never seen this person get up from her chair ever. She was always in her chair when I got there and in her chair when I left. So she got up out of her chair, and I was like, "Oh, this is monumental." She's getting up out of her chair. She went over to my chair and she said, "Oh, lip marks." So that was actually the last time I saw her, because I realized that we saw things from such, literally different points of view, that I didn't have to see her. What she had discovered, though, in the meantime, was that the reason the lip marks were there was because her daughter, her 12-year-old daughter, had been coming in her office during the week and kissing the mirror. and then the maid would come and clean the mirror at the end of the over the weekend. And so we'd start with a clean mirror, but then the daughter would come and do that. And so I thought, okay, you have plenty of things to do over here. Yeah, I think I'll just quit quit the therapy now. Look at this one. The Contest of Somebody is very featured in this room with the red accents. These are wild, you know. So anyway, that was called At the Shrinks because it was a thing about point of view, and these Thorne rooms, of course, are the same. You know, you're as the viewer, you're enormous and looking into this small, shrunken world, which is reassuring because I suppose it's the reason why anyone would play with dolls. It's like you get to be God, I guess, you know, and just make them do stuff, make Barbie say things, make Ken say things, play all the parts. And so I think that, ooh, that's also lovely with the trunk. Where is that with that shining white? Oh, it's a picket fence out there.
Yeah.
But that is quite a room.
And there's a lot of gloss.
Yeah.
There's something that looks almost like it's a really deep shelf on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
It almost looks like a modern kitchen, like a portal to a kitchen, but I don't think that's what it is.
Well, no, because the trunk below makes it impossible to like pass a drink through unless you'd be unless it's for kids who jump up on the trunk and want to order a drink from the kitchen. I don't think it's that. So, what else is in there? Is that a piano? Yeah.
I feel like these rooms, there's so much like about exhibition, like as such, like they're almost like here's an image of what it looks like to display something.
Yeah. It's for sale for sure. Something about it.
But it's an interesting way to get people in the museum. Like I'm just like, so Laurie, when you were a kid, did you always go downstairs first and then work your way up?
No, I had my pattern, and also at that point, I usually was carrying a lot of stuff, so I would often take what were shortcuts. I had my violin, I had my music, I had all my art supplies, so I was like, you know, toting a lot of things along, and so but whenever I could, I would spend time there and try to make my route so that it took me a long time to get to class. You get to see a whole museum on the way, so it was the best. I don't know. I think there's a separate entrance now for the Art Institute that people shortcut in, but it's a wonderful thing to be able to see so many different kinds of work before you try to make one. It's one of my favorite Cage quotes is, when you start a painting, everybody in the world is there. Every painter in the world is there. Everyone you ever knew, all your relatives are there, all your friends, everybody is there at the beginning of the painting. And as you keep painting, they leave. They just wander off, all these painters of yore and your critics, your friends. And then pretty soon there are just a few people and you're still painting. And then pretty soon you're all by yourself painting. And then finally you're gone. And that's painting. And I really love that image of how many things are going through your mind at the beginning of something, and then you get to a point where you're doing something alone,
Interesting.
even without your own preferences sometimes.
That's
And
so interesting.
yeah, but he Cage just taught us so many countless things that it's and I think in many of your things, it reminded me of course, some of his more beautiful ideas about what art is, and it's just there's nothing that isn't art, nothing that it's just about. And I've really come to that conclusion gradually. It doesn't make me not want to make anything anymore, weirdly, but it does make me appreciate every single thing in the world as an exquisite work of art.
Mhm. I was thinking about you and your violin earlier when we were talking as well, because it occurred to me that the violin is also a box.
Yep.
And so it was your first, not a talking box, but a singing box.
Mhm.
And then I have memories of seeing you, or videos of you on stage making yourself, your body into a box,
Mhm.
putting like a speaker in your mouth, being willing to work with your body like that. Was like a pillow speaker. I think you called it a pillow speaker. I don't remember why though.
Well, because it was called a pillow speaker,
Oh,
but
okay.
commercially, what it was is it's a round speaker, and it had a very specific use. Was put in your pillow and listen to whatever music you liked. If you were an insomniac, or even if you weren't, you just like to listen to music, and as you transition from there to there. And so I'm a tinkerer, so I was looking at this thing and going, oh, let's put this in my mouth, and recorded some violin things. So that I thought, well, I really would like to sing like a violin. That would be a really interesting thing to try to do. So that was that. And then the other thing that I think you're talking about was a drum machine that I took apart, and an old Linn drum machine. And so there are these little touch pads that each have a sound on them: snare, um, bass drum, cymbal, rim shot. And they had very long cables on them. And I thought, why are the cables so long? So I thought maybe I'll just, instead of put them in a drum machine, try to fix the drum machine, I'm going to put it in on my shoulder, on my knee, on my hand. So just become a more extended drum machine with the body. So that was, and these are all just things that you do when you take stuff apart and see how it works. So that's it wasn't like I think I should become a human drum machine puppet, whatever, It's just I'm a hands-on person who likes to for example, my studio is that way too. It's like part of it is over there is recording for music and stuff, and the other is film and sculpture and drawings and this and that. And there's sliding glass doors in between, so you don't. It's all mixed up, and I don't think now. Oh, I'll make some music. It's different than that. It's just making things and not putting them in categories so much.
Yeah. It's also amazing how, just the different media that you've been working in for so many years, but also how all your work seems to remember the other work. I'm not really sure what I mean by that, but well, sometimes literally pieces of a work will reappear.
Oh, for sure.
But
I mean,
it's almost like everything
yeah, that's true. I think that's true in most artists' work. That they're little things that a character that reappears in some writing, or phrases that somebody really loves, or and that just thread through every single thing that they do. I definitely have that. For a while, I realized that there was a image of a running man in the last 20 things that I'd done, and I was like, what does that even mean? And
yeah.
there's always a guy running through, and I thought, well, it's it's I don't know if I ever concluded the meaning of the running man, but
I know what you mean. That image is interesting. It's very ambiguous. It's hard to read. Like, is it someone who's afraid, who's running from something fearful?
Could
Or
be
is it,
running towards a big something. It could be running away from a burning building. Could be many things, and that's, I think, what makes it a beautiful image. That it's so complicated as our lives are. Sometimes we don't think that we think we're running towards something, and we're really running away from something else.
yeah.
You know, so, and you can also do both, you know, simultaneously. So, but I don't know why. So some things that you just put in and you don't think, oh, time to put the Running Man in. It's just there.
Yeah, yeah.
Called a
Oh, well, I
theme.
could go on and on, but I think we should maybe look at some questions from
Oh, I'd love to.
the
Yeah,
audience.
yeah.
And
Michael was betting and we asked for some
yeah,
for only really weird ones.
yeah. Wow, there's so many good questions. Okay, here's one. Laurie, the rooms remind me of your experiments with VR, virtual reality. Do you think these experiences are similar to? What difference does it make for the viewer's imagination if they can really enter a virtual space or only peer inside?
Yeah, I think there's not much difference really. You know, the goggle thing is you have to invent a lot of things that the inventor of the Thorne Rooms did too. The designer of the Thorne Rooms did as well. And the very first thing in VR that you have to invent is air. So that otherwise you've got it. You're in an extremely you're in a vacuum. So when you're inventing everything, start with atmosphere. So we fill the air with the tiniest flecks of things, and they ended up being like microscopically tiny letters. So what looked like dust motes were letters. So it was all literally filled with letters. You couldn't really see what they were, but that's you can do tiny. And speaking of tiny in VR, you can really go tiny. So the Thorne Rooms are also airless as well. I find, even though the attempt is to let in sunlight, you don't feel that there's much. Gosh, I feel I'm being so critical of the Thorne Rooms when I actually love them. I really do. I mean, they are. I love looking into them, and as a kid, they took me away to other kinds of worlds. I mean, the fact that those worlds were a little bit, you know, formal, didn't really, I don't think, bother me at the time. I knew they were very formal, and I'd never fit in that world, but still, it was fun to look in.
Yeah, they're almost also, they're like a way to, you see the other art in the Chicago Art Institute differently after you see the art.
Really? In what way do you?
I don't know. I just always feel like there's just like there's this famous essay by this anthropologist named Alfred Gell where he talks about artworks as traps.
Oh.
Do you know this one? Like like he was responding to some art exhibition where the curator had included some really interesting like fish traps alongside other works of art, and fish traps, I think, like, and there was some argument by some other art critic that the traps didn't belong in that context, and he actually wrote a essay defending it. But then he says it's really important that these are traps because all artworks are traps for your attention. And then of course it's not, yeah, isn't that interesting?
Trap is troubling for me. I would say doorways more than traps.
Yeah.
You know, portals, doorways, ways out. I mean, for me, the Thorne Rooms was they always give you a way out to, you know, look through the window or go out into the world from this. So they didn't feel like traps.
Yeah.
At all.
I guess to me they did, but I kind of enjoyed it. You know, I mean, I trapped myself in the mirror. But let's go to another question. Okay, this is a very different one, and I think this is the kind that you were looking for, hopefully. So someone wants to know, what would Laurie's favorite room look like? And if it included a meal, what would the meal be?
Oh gosh. Um, uh, really my favorite room. I mean, uh, some of the qualities of that room would just be somewhat messy. You know, just have stuff around. I love to have things that are visible and lots to look at. Um, was that what do you eat in that room? Was that the question?
If it included a meal, what would the meal be?
Would the meal be, well, it probably wouldn't be necessarily a kitchen, although messy kitchens are great, and kitchens are I find the most talkative rooms of the house. You know, in my um, kitchens, those are the rooms where you know you're throwing stuff together to eat, and people are leaning on, you know, it's casual and and fun, and there's a lot of talking. Then once you take it to the dining room, you gotta, now we gotta talk and eat in a formal way. So the things rooms where you do things, I guess, would be the most
Yeah.
fun.
Well, that brings me to the last question, which kind of fits into this theme a little bit. And this is actually more specific. So someone says, "Hi, Laurie. The art forum flexi disk of let X equal X/0 Superman changed my life. I seem to remember a voyage through rooms and spaces in Puppet Motel. Any Thorne influence there?"
Any what influence?
Any
Oh,
Thorne
Thorne influence there.
influence there?
Probably was. You know, there's something that and probably many of these room things were in the back of my mind were the Thorne rooms. Very likely, you know, very likely. I was not somebody who had a dollhouse. Um, but I did um, love the sensation of being a bit of a voyeur and into the other people's worlds. I mean, I'm considered part of my job also as a writer to be um, a voyeur, and uh, don't you feel that Sianne, as a writer, that you're always kind of eavesdropping on things, listening for how people put it into words?
Sometimes, yeah. Probably in a slightly different way, because I'm not an artist, and I think that's also really just part of being an artist.
I think you are. I think that the things I've read of yours are absolutely that, and but it's also because I think of artists as people who just try to see things a little bit differently and go with that. So I totally, and also words are for me a big art form. I just think it gets awkward when you say what certain things are, like when the first person who invented spoken word art, that was a very unfortunate term, I think. You know, it's so awkward and clumsy.
Yeah,
you know.
No, I know that term has gotten applied to you a lot, and it never.
Oh, it really bugged me. I mean, spoken word art, maybe it's just you know, it doesn't come off the tongue very well. Maybe
Yeah.
that's my grudge against it. It's just not mellifluous, but I don't know. Here's Michael. Hi,
I
Michael.
know, Laurie, I could talk to you forever, but it looks like Michael wants to think.
I think
I
Michael.
apologize for the awkward pop-in. It's the wonders of Zoom. You hit the button a bit too soon, and there you are. But yes, we're at time, and I hate to sort of rudely interrupt the conversation because it's wonderful. And I just want to thank Laurie and Sianne. I want to thank both of you so much for joining us tonight, for sharing your reflections on art, and Laurie on your practice, and spending time together, thinking and talking about the Thorne Rooms. It was absolutely wonderful. And again, it's greatly appreciated. And I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening and joining for this conversation. It's part of our series, again, Artists on Artists, where we invite artists in to reflect on their work and make connections to different areas of the collection. And this was a really wonderful conversation. And so thank you both again, and thank you everyone else. Be well, stay safe, and we hope to see you at the museum soon. Okay, good night, everyone.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you. Thanks.